Good evening. Welcome to live stream at Upper Room. My name is Ron Strand. We're glad that you're joining us, or those that might be joining us a little bit later as people log on. One of the things that we've noticed is that most of our views come after we've aired live, and we get hundreds and hundreds of views after we've done our live version. But those of you who are on now live, you get to ask questions. So you guys are the good ones, and we're glad that you're joining us. Hey, a couple of things before we get started. I am really pleased to announce that we're having our grand reopening at the Upper Room on this will be Friday, August 20th. And we are going to do a night of comedy with comedians Robert G. Lee, Carrie Pomarelli, and Ron Pearson. Three comics who have been at the Upper Room on a number of occasions. Great, funny people. Of course, they wouldn't be comics if they weren't funny. And but it's going to be a time to laugh. We all need to laugh right now, and we're looking forward to that. I think a lot of people might be a little bit apprehensive about coming out right now still, but the venue that we've got that the Lord has opened up for us is a wonderful venue in Dana Point, California, and it's going to be a great time. By the way, if you are a little bit hesitant about coming out, one of the things about this venue is the seating is pretty spread out and a lot of room between the aisles. And so it's a great place if you have some apprehensions. It's on a Friday night. Typically, we've done our concerts and our events on Saturday nights. This is going to be on a Friday night. We're trying that out. But we'd love to have you there. If you want to come, make a reservation. You don't have to pay anything up front. We do it all on donation, and we'll ask for a donation when you come. But make a reservation at theupperroompresents.com. That's theupperroompresents.com. And just click on the event and make a reservation. There it is. And make a reservation. We'd love to have you out. It's going to be a great time. Good time. Also, if you haven't liked us on Facebook, please do that. Just click like, and we can you'll get notified anytime we have an event coming up or one of our live streams. Also, tell your friends who are not on Facebook if they want to view our live stream. They could do it on YouTube. We simulcast on YouTube. Both the Upper Room, both the Facebook and the YouTube channels are The Upper Room Presents. You could find us that way. So thanks for watching tonight. We've got a great lineup tonight. I'm really pleased to have Victoria Robinson back on. She was on probably last year sometime. Victoria is a pro-life advocate. She is she's in the forefront of the fight against abortion. And she doesn't only speak from an intellectual standpoint, but she speaks from experience. And she's got a riveting story. We're pleased to have her back on tonight for a little bit of an update. Would you please welcome Victoria Robinson? Hey, Victoria, how are you?
Hi, Ron. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for being with us tonight. We'd love to kind of get updated on things and hear about what's going on in the forefront on the pro-life movement. And but just to kind of give folks a reference, let's give them a thumbnail about your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I will tell you that what's still going on is we're still killing babies, Ron. I'll start with that.
Yeah.
I've been involved in the pro-life cause for 25 years. This is my 25th year now. And unfortunately for me, I got involved because of my own decision to have an abortion over 34 years ago. It was the number one greatest regret of my life. And I was a very young single mother with two children who was convinced by the abortion clinic that having another child would be incredibly selfish, since I was struggling to take care of the two children that I already had. I was told that I was not carrying anything more than a clump of cells and a blob of tissue. And the woman at the abortion clinic said, when you leave here, never think of this again. You can have more children later because you're so young. And there was lie after lie after lie. So over 10 years, I lived with the guilt and with the shame of my secret that I did not tell anyone. The woman who walks into an abortion clinic, Ron, I always say, is not the same one who walks out.
Yeah.
And that was true for me. And so after 10 years, I found myself at a local pregnancy resource center who offered me after abortion recovery that I didn't even know existed, actually, Ron, for those 10 years. I just thought I came to the conclusion that this is what I was going to have to live with for the rest of my life. And I should have to live with it because I made the choice. No one dragged me in that abortion clinic, although my boyfriend talked me into it, although the abortion clinic workers were very encouraging about it and in convincing me what I was about to do was no big deal, nothing more than a tooth being pulled. I left there and I was a different person, and the guilt and shame just compounded year after year after year. So, as I said, I felt that it was what I deserved and what I had to come to the resolve that was my lot in life, if you will.
Yeah.
Until I met a woman named Mary, who was the director of a pregnancy center. She went to the church that I attended, invited me to come and volunteer. And when I finally confessed to her that I'd had an abortion over a decade prior, she said, "We're going to get you some help." And I
Wow.
didn't even know there was help available.
Yeah.
So I signed up for after abortion recovery, and it changed my life. That retreat changed my life. It did for me in 3.5 days what I was never able to accomplish. No matter how many times I went to church, no matter how many times I said yes, no matter how many times when I was asked to sing or work in the church nursery, I said yes to everything, thinking finally maybe this time the pain will go away, but it never did until I went through that 3.5 days. And by the end of it, I knew then that I was going to facilitate these events, become trained, and that every man and woman needed to know there was recovery and help after having an abortion.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, tell me, was it difficult for you to tell that lady that you had had an abortion? Did you feel like that was a secret that you had to keep within the church, or keep from the church, I guess I would say?
I did, Ron. I was singing worship, leading worship in a church of 8,000 people. And week after week, I felt like here I am, ushering these people into God's presence, myself included. But then in the back of my mind, the thought that was running through my head the entire time was, if they knew, can they tell? They will kick me out of church. They will never let me sing here. They will never let me pray with anyone or be part of any of the ministries here if they knew what I'd done. So, yes, it was very difficult. And so telling Mary, it was almost like I was going to die if I didn't tell her, Ron.
Yeah.
I had to tell her. I had to tell someone that that I had done that, and it at the risk of being rejected, because I didn't let friends get too close to me in that 10-year period, Ron, because I kept feeling like if they knew, they wouldn't want to be my friend. And when you have close friends, if you can't share your deepest, darkest stuff, your junk, then
Yeah.
that's not really a true friendship. So as long as I kept them at a distance and didn't tell, I felt like I won't have to tell them, they won't ever have to know. Even the
Yeah.
women's ministry that I was a part of, Ron, none of them knew, because I thought, once again, God had already rejected me in my mind. And there was no way anyone else was going to let me be a part of anything or be around them or eat with them at their table if they'd known what I had done. So
So,
telling Mary was difficult, but when I told Mary and she loved me in spite of what I said, and she didn't judge me or condemn me like I was convinced all those years anyone would do if I told them, it made me go, wow, okay, maybe I can tell someone else. And then now here I am. I never told anyone for over a decade and was
yeah.
terrified to even look in a mirror and say it to myself if I was home alone. And now God's been taking me all across around the world, literally
Yeah, isn't
sharing
that
my
amazing?
story.
How God just takes our broken pieces and uses them for His glory. Now, you said something that struck me, that you felt. Did you feel judged by God at that point? Did you feel? Did you feel unworthy? Did you, like you say, you were leading worship, you're in front of people, um, and yet you had this secret that. Did you not feel God's forgiveness immediately?
Oh my gosh, immediately it took over a
Well,
decade.
not immediately, yeah, but
It took over a decade for me to
yeah,
I thought he forgave everything except abortion. I
Yeah.
thought he forgave everyone else's abortion except for mine, because I would have women come to me that would whisper their secret to me. And it seemed to be always myself that they would come to. And it made me feel like God wanted to torture me and to continually remind me of what I've done. So absolutely, I felt he hated me. I felt that the reason these women were singling me out, because I was part of the women's ministry at this point,
Hmm.
the women's ministry did not know, but we would get together after an event or a conference and talk about how that went. And I would say, just so, yeah, very nonchalantly, did
Hmm.
anyone else hear from anyone who'd had an abortion? And everybody would say, you always get the women who've had abortions. They always want to come to you, Victoria. They just feel drawn to you. And I was like, I know, I don't get it. So that just made me more convinced that God was just after me, and he wanted to torture me because he hated me so much. So did I feel rejected by God? Did I feel hated by him? That's an understatement.
Yeah, I can imagine. So telling Mary was just the beginning of the healing for you.
It was a floodgate of healing, because what I had convinced myself, what I allowed the enemy to convince me, was that I wasn't lovable once people knew, that I wasn't someone who could be a friend, that I wasn't someone who could be accepted. And then when Mary just looked at me and said, I already knew, I was so shocked. And I asked her, what do you mean? And then I am thinking, is it tattooed on my head? I mean, how
Yeah.
could you
Yeah.
tell? And she said, I just knew. I felt like the Lord showed me that you had. And when you were ready, you'd tell me. And now I want to help you. I want to get you in after abortion recovery, because I know God's going to take what the enemy meant for evil, Victoria, and he's going to use it for good. And I believe you're going to reach the nations with your story. And I got to tell you, 25 years later, it's still a very humbling to tell you that I'm watching that unfold. Before COVID hit, I was in Italy speaking and sharing my story. I've been to Romania and Moldova and Chisinau and South Africa. I mean, he's just taking me everywhere, and it's mind-boggling. But he knows, and I know, that these women and men, and with the abortions we've had in this country, Ron, there's about 175, 180 million people in the United States alone, men and women, who've experienced abortion, who need to hear the message of hope. They need to hear the truth that that does not define you, and your identity does not have to be an abortion.
Yeah, folks, I want to show you the book that Victoria published. Let me see if I can get it in. They Lied to Us is what it's called, by Victoria. Well, Maurice's got it up there. Right there we go. I don't have to hold it up. It's called They Lied to Us. And what this book is, I read it, and it's a page turner, folks. It's a real page turner, because it's got several stories, testimonies of various people that Victoria interviewed, and they tell their story about the abortion mill. And as Victoria said earlier, she came out a different person after that abortion, and all of these people did too. What they don't tell you, and hence the title, They Lied to Us, because there's lies every step along the way that Victoria has explained in that whole abortion industry, and they don't tell you about the after effects. One of the questions I did want to ask you is that there's some folks, like when I've said, I'm going to have someone on that is a pro-abortion person. They say, I'm against abortion, but I don't know. I'm not that passionate about it. Can you articulate to somebody who might be feeling that way, that why is it so important? Why is it so important to for Christians, for us to be so pro-life, or to be anti-abortion, if that makes sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me. It's an oxymoron to be a pro-choice Christian. That doesn't make any sense to me. It never has. And I don't understand why it's so difficult. And I get what you're saying, Ron, but I've never understood, why do I have to explain to you why, as a Christian, that you should be pro-life? Honestly, it's mind-boggling to me. Because even some people who are not Christians are pro-life.
Yeah.
I meet Christians who are pro-choice,
Yes.
who use the argument, yeah, but what about in rape? Well, the baby still belongs to that mother. And why should the child have to pay with its life for the sins of its father?
Yeah.
And I've counseled women, Ron, who have been the products of rape who became pregnant. And by the way, it's less than 1%.
Yeah, I know.
It's very, very rare to become pregnant in a rape.
Right.
This is my own personal belief. I believe that in the most traumatic experience a woman can go through, that almost it's like your body is not conducive to a pregnancy. So I always say, as rare as it is, if you become pregnant in a rape, really think about that, about this child that you're carrying. Well, I can tell you two women, one who chose abortion after a rape, one who did not and placed her child for abortion. The woman who chose abortion from her rape said to me in the counseling room, once I realized that was my baby too, it was another trauma on top of the rape trauma of realizing what I'd done. I should have put my child for adoption, would have been a better option. The woman who chose to place her child up for adoption, and there are women who've chosen to raise their children. I've never met a woman who said, I wish I had killed my baby.
Yeah. Right.
I just haven't.
Right.
She said the greatest gift that came out of the rape, which was so ugly and traumatic, was this beautiful baby boy that she was able to bless another family with. So there just is no argument to justify abortion. And it isn't just that it ends the life of that unborn child, Ron. People need to understand it's about the aftermath of what it does to these parents.
Yeah.
Christ didn't just die on the cross for these unborn children.
Right.
He died for these parents as well. And they matter too. And the devastation that abortion has brought, I believe, on our society, on our country, and families, and on these individual parents is catastrophic.
It absolutely is. And I know one of the things that you had particularly wanted to talk about, and maybe spend a little time tonight, is, we talk about the effects that an abortion has, the negative effects abortion has on the women, which is severe. But there are men who have condoned abortion, or perhaps didn't really want their girlfriend or wife, whoever it might be, to have an abortion, but they did anyway. And talk about that a little bit. Are there a lot of men out there that have suffered the effects of abortion?
I am so glad that you brought that up. I'll start with a quick story, Ron. After I went through the after-abortion recovery that I was speaking about earlier, I felt that it was time for me to write a book. And here I was, I hadn't told anyone, and now I was going to write a book about it. And that's when They Lied to Us came out, and it was published. When my book came out, I felt this. And now remember, I'd gone through healing. So I'm not saying those that might be listening who've had abortions to get on the phone and call
right
a mother of an aborted child. But I had gone through healing. I was in a good place. After the abortion, my boyfriend at the time, the father, we broke up. 9 out of 10 times when an abortion occurs, couples don't make it. It's just traumatic of an experience they went through. I never looked at him the same. He never looked at me the same. So we broke up, went our separate ways. And so it had been over 10 years. I felt very, very prompted to call him. We knew a lot of the same people. Even though I changed so many, nobody would be able to recognize him in the book unless they knew about that time in my life who my boyfriend was. But I called him to tell him about the book. And this whole time, all these years, I had built this resentment, this hatred for this guy, because he talked me into it. He told me this is what was right and this is what I want you to do. And he wasn't there to tell me, we'll make it work. It's going to be okay. He didn't care. He just wanted it taken care of. So when he answered the phone, I said, hi. That's all I said. He knew it was me. He recognized my voice, and he began to weep.
Wow.
He cried so hard, Ron. I couldn't understand what he was saying. So when he calmed down and I could, continue to say, I don't understand you, he said, I've been waiting for this call for over a decade.
Oh my gosh.
beg you for forgiveness for what I made you do. It's
Wow.
haunted me all these years. I've been in therapy for 8 years dealing with it. I should have protected you and our child, and I failed you both. Can you forgive me? Now, in
Wow.
that moment, I realized two things, Ron. I hadn't fully forgiven him, a little Miss Saint that I thought I was, who had
Yeah.
just gone through after abortion recovery. I still was holding on to some unforgiveness towards him. And in that moment, I realized, I've got to let this go, because we think unforgiveness is doing something for ourselves, but what it's doing is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. So at that moment I said, yes, I forgive you. And it felt like my whole healing came full circle. The second thing that happened for me in that call was that my mind shifted to how I viewed men in this abortion issue. And I felt like God spoke to my heart and said, don't ever forget these men. These children had fathers, and they're hurting too. And from that moment on, I have not ever been at a church speaking or at an event, a fundraiser, wherever I'm at, even in an interview like this, where I don't want to talk about the men. My next book that's going to be coming out by the end of this year is called They Lied to Us Too. TOO.
TOO. Right. Yeah.
And I've been interviewing men for several years. And Ron, these men have not met each other. But every time after the interview's over, by the time we hang up, they've been weeping. They're telling me their stories, whether they paid for it, talked her into it, drove her, or made her do it. It doesn't matter. They all have different stories. But these men say this to me: thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for telling our story, because this has always been about the women. Well, I've been in agony. I've never had more children. My only son, I drove my girlfriend to abort when she was 9 months pregnant.
Wow.
My only child, I took my girlfriend and made her do it, or told her I'd break up with her, and I still broke up with her after she aborted my only child. One man told me that he drove his girlfriend, dropped her off, went home. His mom walked in his room, and somehow she said, what's going on? Are you guys pregnant? Where is she? She just knew. And he said, don't worry, we're getting it taken care of. And he said his mom looked at him and said, you cannot do this. Go back. You have to make her stop. So he drove, he said, like a bat out of hell, that abortion clinic to stop her, but it was too late.
Oh.
So he has to live with that. These men are hurting, and I am determined, Ron, to share their stories. I produced some videos a couple summers ago that have millions of views on YouTube, and these men shared their stories. And I just have such a heart for these men being heard. We cannot make this just about women, because we've already emasculated men enough in this country, and we don't allow them to take the place in society that they need to have, that makes us a more normal functioning society. And we cannot do that to men anymore. So I'm determined to do what I can to bring that to light.
It's had to have been disheartening for you in being who you are, and because you're making a difference in the culture. We won't know until you get to heaven, when God says to you, how many women that you changed their hearts. But it's got to be disheartening to you to see the slippery ground that this country has gone through over the last 50 years, from just legalizing it as a constitutional right under Roe v. Wade. And then to today, where we have, what do they call it? Late birth. Well, I can't remember what they call it.
Partial birth and late
partial birth abortion. And up to the moment.
And to a time, Ron, when we're celebrating it and lighting up buildings.
Yes.
And applauding the right to kill our children.
Yes. And I think of that clip that we all saw of that governor, West Virginia Governor Ralph Latham, or I can't remember his name, but saying how, and he's a doctor. He's a governor, but he's a doctor, talking about how, the process, we make the woman comfortable. We make sure the baby's comfortable. It's like, are you kidding me? It's absolute murder.
It's absolute deception. We live in such a society right now that is so deceived about what abortion is and what it isn't. And I would challenge anybody who is still on the fence about how they feel about it to watch an abortion.
That's a
I
great
mean,
idea.
you can get on YouTube and literally watch an abortion. And I'm not talking about the sickos who would want to do that. I'm talking about the people who are I believe the majority of people are good, Ron. I really do. I will never be convinced that the majority of people aren't good. And one man said to me, listen, I I just don't want the government telling women what to do with their bodies. And I said, hey, I get it. I get it. And I believe in free will. I believe I serve a God who gives me free will to make the choices I want to make, whatever those choices are. Now, I don't get to choose the circumstances of those choices, but I can do whatever I want. But what I want you to know is that women deserve the truth. Men deserve the truth. We put warnings, Ron, on cigarette cartons
Yeah.
about what smoking can do to us. But yet the abortion industry is so careful and so calculated to make sure they keep the truth from women. I had a woman that was in a retreat that I did recently, these weekend retreats that I've been doing now for 25 years. And she said to us on Saturday when we work as a group, we do group sessions, and she came to us and said, you know, I have to let you guys know that for 19 years since my abortion, I've been convinced I'm the only woman who feels the way I feel, the only woman who's suffering the way I've suffered until I came to this event.
Wow.
The healing for me took place on our first night, Thursday night, when each of you women were sharing your story and what you have gone through. And I was sitting there realizing it's not just me, because every time she would Google, is this from my abortion? Am I depressed because of my abortion? Am I can't stay in a good relationship because of my abortion? Is this happening? Is it all these different things? Everything that came up said there is no link to depression or XYZ in your abortion, because the abortion industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry that can afford, and they make sure that when a woman Googles, she finds lies.
Oh, yeah.
She feels like she's crazy. And so this woman was just crying tears of joy saying, I'm not crazy. They've been lying to me. Well, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're lying to people every single day.
They really are. And it's all lies. And a lot of it is ignorance, I think, on the part of both the women and the men. You know, we've reduced abortion in this country to the point of, or promoted it, I guess you'd say better, to the point of, well, yeah, it's just a procedure. Go get it taken care of, you know. And
yeah, that's true, Ron. But I got to say this to you: before I chose abortion, I had a friend who'd had 7, 8 abortions. She used it as birth control. And I would get in fights with her. And I was already a mother of 2 children, Ron. It wasn't like I didn't know the outcome of a pregnancy. So I'm telling you, when the mindset happens and it shifts to, I'm now in a crisis and I'm pregnant. I've got these 2 little girls. My husband has abandoned us. He is not supporting us financially, emotionally, in any way. I'm working 12, 15 hours a day. I can barely feed them and take care of them. Now I'm here. I'm pregnant by my boyfriend, and I'm not married. It's easy to manipulate a woman in the most vulnerable time of her life.
Yeah.
So I want people to understand, people who have abortions aren't bad people.
Yeah.
They're just put into situations where they feel trapped. They're terrified. They just need someone to come along and say, hey, let me help you. Hey, I will get you the help that you need. I'll help you find the resources. I'll pay your rent this month if that's what it takes. How about the churches getting involved? I mean, where are the churches, Ron? We've got churches on every corner in this country, yet we have close to 3,000 abortions taking place. We have homeless people on every corner, every city you go to. We've got people suffering because the churches aren't stepping up. And don't even get me started on them, because I truly believe God's called me to antagonize religious people.
Yeah.
And it drives me insane that those are the ones who should be standing up, and I can barely get churches to let me come and speak about the abortion issue. They don't want to talk about it.
That's absolutely amazing that you can't hardly get them.
It's also despicable.
It's despicable. You're right. It's absolutely despicable. Well, in our closing moments, Victoria, what I would be good if you could, because maybe not right this moment, but sometime in the future, somebody's watching this, because we do get more views, as I said up front, on our podcast later than we do on the live feed. But some young woman might be watching who is faced with this. What would you say to that woman? And then maybe even the man who's the father. What would you say to them? Because what it affects their life.
I would say, first of all, breathe. Breathe. A pregnancy is not a terminal illness. And an abortion, if you choose abortion, is going to be a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I would say take a deep breath. Find someone who you trust and someone that really truly cares about you. Find your local pregnancy resource center. Seek them out. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to condemn you, and they're not going to talk you into anything. But go there before you walk into an abortion clinic. Remember this, the abortion clinic is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They make their money from ending the life of your baby. So the last thing they're going to tell you is the truth. So I would say seek out some local help. Get in touch with someone like me. I will help you. I will find the resources in the city where you live. I've done that. I do that almost every single day, Ron. People reach out to me on social media, and I may not live in your city, but I'll find someone in your city who is willing to help you.
That's wonderful.
Don't think you're alone, because you're not alone. And I promise you, it's not the end of the world. But if you walk into an abortion clinic, get ready, because you have just stepped into a realm that's going to change who you are for the rest of your life. I've been through healing. I know God's forgiven me and I have joy. But Ron, I don't want to sit here and pretend that I wish I couldn't go back and change it.
Sure.
I wish I could, but I can't.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing I can do about it. And I'll leave you with this last story. This young girl reached out to me on social media, and she said, I'm pregnant. I'm young. She was a teenager about to start college, I believe. And she said, but I've been following you. I respect you. You seem to have come through this okay. So I'll just do whatever it is you've done. And I got her number quickly. We got on the phone. I said, you're not going to let my abortion condone your abortion.
Right.
What you don't see is the pain, is what you don't see is the regret. Yeah. So we had a long conversation, and she chose life. So people just
wonderful.
Need to truth. And I think that, as I said, bad people aren't having an abortion. Uninformed people are having an abortion.
Victoria, you had mentioned if someone could reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can find me on Facebook, Victoria Robinson. I'm on Instagram. I think it's R Victoria Robinson. You can find me there. You can email me rvictoriarobinson@gmail.com. I will have some other ways to find me soon. I'm working on some things, website and stuff like that. But there you go. There it is. Thank you for doing that. Reach out to me. I'll do whatever I can to help.
That's wonderful. I so appreciate your heart and your passion for this. I read all of your posts on Facebook, and I'm always so amazed the passion and compassion that you have, and the energy that you have, because you are making a difference in the culture, and that's what we need. And yes, we need the churches to get involved more. Would you stay on?
Go ahead. Last thing too, if you're someone who has had an abortion,
yes,
you can also email me, and we'll get you in after abortion recovery. Because,
wonderful.
Please just get in touch with me. It's available to you. Don't wait 10 years like I did, or maybe it's been 20 or 30 or 40 for you. I've met women from all walks, or maybe it's been a week. But get in touch with me so that we can get you the help that you need.
Folks, rvictoriarobinson@gmail.com. She'll help you through it if you're contemplating it. If you've already had an abortion, there's no judgment there. She wants to help you recover from that, because so many women and men have suffered and gone through years of pain and guilt over this. But there's help, and we have a God who forgives, and that's what's wonderful. Victoria, would you stay on, because I want to introduce you to Robert Tyler, because I think you guys should know each other just from a standpoint of what Bob's doing in the arena of religious rights and so forth, not necessarily so much on abortion, but I think there might be some synergy there. I'd like to bring in Bob and just maybe stay on for a second and talk with Bob. Hey, folks, I'd love to introduce you again to Robert Tyler, who's the president of Advocates for Faith and Freedom. And full disclosure, I act as chairman on the board of directors of this organization. So I'm, what is it that commercial says? I'm not only the president of the company, I also use the product. So we're going to talk about some of the cases that Bob's working on in the religious rights community. Bob, welcome Bob Tyler, folks. There he is, Bob.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Bob, I know you've been listening for the last few minutes because I saw you pop into the back room there. And I wanted you to meet Victoria and for you to have her name and likewise. Because
good to meet you, Victoria.
Hi, Robert.
We haven't really dealt with too many cases with regard to abortion, have we, over the years at Advocates?
Well, it wasn't long ago that we had a huge victory in California when the state tried to pass a law against pro-life clinics, pregnancy counseling clinics, that required them to basically hand out the phone number for someone to get an abortion. And so we had a huge victory there. That was one of the significant issues. A lot of the issues have been litigated as it relates to abortion, and I think the main issue, and there's a case that is in front of the U.S. Supreme Court now that could wind up being the case that overturns Roe versus Wade. And so
you're referring to the Mississippi 15? Is it the 15-week rule? Is that what you're referring to, Bob?
Yeah, I believe that's the case. So we have not of late in the last couple of years dealt much in the arena with folks as it relates to abortions. But over the years, we've had, numerous circumstances where, we've had girls who have needed to get help because their parents were going to force them into an abortion. And there's a lot of speech issues as well on campuses where, we had one young lady who wanted to put up a pro-life table. And what was so awesome was, Ron, you might remember, this was probably about 15 years ago. This young gal, her name was Carly, and we were able to force the school to allow her to put a pro-life table up because the week before they had, Planned Parenthood and all these other groups that were out there. And she put her table up, and she was, so happy to be able to do that. She called us back a day or two later and had tears. She was crying, and she said, "I just have to tell you guys thank you, because there was a girl that came up to my table, and she was with her boyfriend, and because I was able to speak to her, she chose not to have an abortion." And it was a couple days later, and she called and just said how, anyways, it was had such a great impact. So it feels good
That's
to
wonderful.
Participate once in a while in cases where now we know there's a life who's probably, a teenager at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons I thought it would be good for you to meet Victoria, Bob, is if we run into some of those cases in the future, because she's right on the cutting edge of what's going on out there, and she's Spitfire. Can I say that? You are a Spitfire, and
Awesome.
You're a voice out there that we need, Victoria.
Well, and I'll tell you this, you guys, if you need any help with anything coming up or a voice to speak in front of legislators, whatever, you've got my number, Ron. You can pass it on. I'm all about it. I want the truth to be known. I want these young women and men to understand the truth. And we're not just fighting for these unborn children. We are fighting for their parents.
Right. Yeah.
That's true too.
Yeah.
And if you need, if you come across any circumstances, don't hesitate to give us a call.
Oh, I won't.
we have some incredibly passionate women on staff that we would love to take on more abortion related cases, or pro-life cases, I should say, cases where we're furthering life. It's close to our heart. It just doesn't happen. We just don't have as many of those circumstances these days.
Yeah. Are you hearing from more men at all yet, Bob? I mean, I do see some men standing up fighting for their children not to be aborted.
I haven't, not of late.
Okay.
Well, I will connect both of you with your contact information subsequent to our time tonight. Victoria, it's always a pleasure to see you and to talk to you and get an update. And you know what, can I just pray for you very quickly as we kind of transition here? Lord, I want to pray for Victoria and what she's doing, and that you'd give her wisdom and direction, and that your spirit would mightily be upon her, that your mantle would continue to be upon her, to speak to truth to this culture, and to impact young women and young men who might be contemplating abortion. Bless her, Lord, mightily. Bless her in the days to come, and we ask this in your precious name. Amen.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great interview. I'll be watching.
Okay, great. Thanks, Victoria.
Bye-bye. Good to meet you.
You too.
So, Bob, I want to get right into this because we want to talk about the vaccine mandates and some of the things that we're working on there. And so, why don't we jump right into that? Where are we at with the mandates?
Ron, it is not in a good place. I will say that this is such a new area of law. It is, people call and say, what are our rights? And it's a big question mark at this point in time. Generally, the law has not been favorable for us with regard to vaccine issues, particularly, for example, in the past, the courts have upheld the mandatory vaccines for kids to go to school, for example, in California, and other mandatory vaccines. Now, the problem of it is that we've never really had the circumstance where we're talking about this vaccine that is still in its investigative process, in the testing phase, which is where we're at. And so that's the COVID vaccines that we have right now are not authorized, as everybody knows, by the FDA, and they're only authorized because of an emergency use authorization plan. Now, what's scary right now is that the government is going to private companies and compelling private companies to mandate the vaccine. So they're telling all of the large companies, we want you to require it of your employees because we can't require it ourselves. We want you to require it. And so that is what's happening. There is this from the administration all the way down to our governor and our local county offices. We're finding that they just don't care any longer. These bureaucrats no longer care about liberty. And so at this point in time, I'll tell you where we're at from a legal perspective. We are challenging these vaccines because they're experimental, and there is a federal law that says that no one can be forced to take the vaccine. But there is a question that is raised under the Emergency Use Authorization Act that says no one can be forced to take the vaccine, and but an argument is being made by the administration, the presidential administration, and the Attorney General's office that even though no one can be forced to take the vaccine, that doesn't mean that the government can't require it of their employees, of persons who want to participate in society. It just means that they cannot force someone to take it under the Emergency Use Authorization Act. Now, we disagree with that. It just seems to be completely contrary to any good interpretation of the law and public policy. So we have two cases right now that we are in the midst of working on. One is on behalf of some students against Loyola Marymount University. And that's a case that these kids are being told that if you don't get the vaccine, you can come to school, but you have to be segregated in your dorm rooms. You have to be in a separate wing or a separate dorm building, number one. Number two, they have to wear masks. Nobody else has to wear masks, at least as of the last time we looked at the policy. Number three, that they have to be socially distant. So in other words, you can have all of the rest of the kids, if they get vaccinated, they can sit around the table with each other. But the kid that is unvaccinated has to sit at a whole different table elsewhere 6 feet away. Lastly, they actually had a provision in there that said that students who do not vaccinate must indemnify the university for damages if someone else gets sick. Indemnify means cover them for their liability if some other student were to come down with coronavirus and there would be some sort of damages. So we brought that lawsuit. But something even greater happened just this afternoon, which is one of the reasons why I wasn't able to get on earlier and participate in the whole meeting here, listening to Victoria. So we have one of our own law clerks who goes to Santa Clara University. It's a private Catholic university. He submitted for a religious exemption. They denied it because they won't grant a religious exemption. He submitted a medical exemption from his doctor. They denied the medical exemption. He's going into his third year of law school, and they told him that there's no online option, so he can't do it remote, can't do it from home. No online option. If he doesn't get vaccinated, he's not allowed to come to school. So what our law clerk did was, out of pure pressure, he got the vaccination. He got the first vaccination, and he now is able to move into his dorm room, but he has to get the next vaccination within 30 days. And now we're looking at it saying, wait a minute, you got pressured into this. This is coercion. And therefore, we need to do something about it. And bottom line is that we're investigating it right now. We're trying to figure out a way to go in so he doesn't have to get that second shot of the Pfizer vaccine, because that appears to be the time when most of the effects are coming for individuals after they get the second vaccine. And now he's really regretting even getting the first one, but he did so under pure pressure, under the pressure put upon him, because how's he going to, he's already spent probably $100,000, if not more, in tuition to get his, for his first 2 years of law school. Now he has to go into his last year of law school, his third years. And if he doesn't get this vaccine, he can't graduate from Santa Clara. He'd have to try to find some other way to transfer to another law school at some point in time, but he'll lose a year. So it's just unconscionable what's happening. We have dozens and dozens of people calling us literally every day. We have 80 firefighters in one county. We have nurses and doctors. They're coming from all over. And frankly, Ron, we don't have the resources to be able to help everybody who needs the help right now. It's shocking.
Bob, isn't this one big constitutional infringement on our constitutional rights that's going to be brought into the courts? I mean, this is absurd. I mean, aren't these things just contrary to our constitutional rights if you choose not to have this vaccine?
It would seem that way. But Ron, here's the game that is being played by the far left, by the progressives. The game that they're playing is they're saying, wait, this isn't the government doing this to you. These are your peers. These are the companies who are telling you that, if you want to go into Costco, you got to wear a mask. Or are they going to say you have to be vaccinated in the near future? They're doing that to universities all across, both public and private. And so what's happening is the question is the Constitution. Does the Constitution apply? Well, the Constitution applies to prevent governmental agents from taking action that would violate the Bill of Rights. violate our First Amendment. Now, if you have a private business or a private university, unless they are acting on behalf of the government, and we can prove that, they're not subjected to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, as it pertains to the First Amendment. So we can't sue.
Is that tantamount to we have the right to refuse service to anybody kind of thing, where they can say, if you're not vaccinated, we're not going to serve you?
Well, that leads us to a different legal analysis. Now, we can't sue in that circumstance on the basis that they have violated, our rights of free exercise or equal protection or different things along those lines. What we would have to do is we would have to bring a lawsuit and say, wait a minute, we are a class of people that is being discriminated against, generally speaking, and usually we would have to look to state law that says you can't discriminate against persons on the basis of race, religion, color, creed, sexual orientation. And under these circumstances, we'll say, look, this group of people is not getting vaccinated, and many, if not all of them, are doing so because of their faith. They're saying that I have a religious conviction against doing this. And Ron, I think that's something that's worth talking about right now. What is there, some people look at this and say, look, I'm opposed to getting the vaccine. It's not necessarily a religious reason. I'm just opposed because I think it's unsafe and I don't want to be part of the experiment. Mm-hmm. And they don't quite necessarily see the religious perspective behind not getting this vaccine. And I'll say real quickly, one, the origins of the 3 vaccines that are out now originated due to aborted fetal cells. There's this stem line that has been generated since I think it was the 70s or 80s or something like that. And it's been used ever since. And so one can say, look, the origins of these vaccines came as a result of experiments using aborted fetal tissue or aborted fetal cells, et cetera, these stem lines. So some can have a conscience objection or a religious objection based upon that, based upon life. The other aspects of it is that some look at this vaccine and say, look, this is when I bear the risks out, I look at the risk of getting COVID or getting this new variant. My risk of dying from that is very small, especially if you're under 50 years old in particular, or especially the young people, 30 years and younger. There's absolutely no reason to be getting this vaccine as far as I can tell. And so what happens is these, you can look at this and say from just a balancing risks. I think God gives us the Holy Spirit to inform ourselves, right? He is our helper. He is our instructor. He gives us divine guidance. Mm-hmm. And my conviction may not be your conviction. And the scripture speaks of telling us to seek out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Seek out your own salvation. And so some of us have convictions of maybe, I don't smoke, but I can't say that someone else, should have the same exact conviction, or drinking, or those kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of issues. And I think the same thing when it comes to this vaccine. There's some Christians who might say, I'm okay with it, no problem. That doesn't mean that someone else might not be seriously convicted by the Holy Spirit to be saying, no, I don't feel like I should be getting this vaccine. So there's a very clear religious objection that can be raised.
Bob, there's such ignorance and non-understanding out there about this vaccine, which indeed is not a vaccine. It's simply, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's simply supposedly a means so that you don't get extreme symptoms, isn't that what it really is? And where I'm going with this is the lunacy in all of this is that why are they pushing it? It's not preventing people from spreading it. Indeed, people that have been vaccinated are spreading it in some studies, showing more so than people who are non-vaccinated.
Yeah.
What's behind this?
It is this whole battle. people have asked me this many times over. The whole COVID battle, and is anybody who's listened to us talk about this stuff before, we've been involved defending the churches, representing the churches, businesses who have been shut down, and through this whole COVID chaos. Why? And now we're talking about vaccines, and why is it that they are so determined to force everybody to get this vaccine when, according to the VAERS system, last time I looked about 3 weeks ago, more than 12,000 people are reportedly have died by getting this vaccine. And let me just note also that there's some studies from Harvard and elsewhere that say that's just a small fraction that actually gets reported. I was told, I haven't confirmed this myself, but that Harvard did a study and said that it's about 10 times when people report vaccine injuries, the actual injuries probably about 10 times. So I don't know whether that's true or not, but if that's true, it wouldn't surprise me because I'm sitting here right now aware of 4 circumstances, 2 people, 1 brain damage, 1 in a coma, and 2 have died from the vaccine, as far as we can tell, because it all happened within 1 week. In one case, 3 days of getting the vaccine. We hear about these circumstances. I've never heard of vaccine injuries before, but in the big picture, why? What is it? What's behind this? And I can't help but to think that this is a spiritual dimension that we are now dealing with.
Yeah.
It is nothing less than spiritual, because I really don't believe that, Bill Gates or, the Trilateral Commission or whoever these, organizations are that do exist out there, that, these conspiracy type theories. I don't think any of those, the World Economic Forum, I don't think that they're smart enough and have the ability to be able to have put all of this together and caused all of the nations around the world to do these shutdowns, to begin forcing vaccines, and to be in panic and to create fear. And, the Lord's not given us a spirit of fear, but of wisdom, power, and a sound mind, of love, power, and a sound mind, but a sound mind. And I think that's what we've lost. People are in fear over things. And now we're taking something that seemed, we're being forced to take a vaccine, and people are doing it out of fear. Yet that vaccine is actually probably more dangerous to most of the people who are actually taking it than the coronavirus is.
Yeah, and this whole Delta variant is less dangerous than the original one. Yeah. And you hit it on the head, because and I think that's exactly where I was going, because when things don't make sense, it's usually spiritual. There's a spirit behind this. There's a lying spirit behind this, because it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Because when you stack up the reality of this vaccine, and I hate to even use that word because it's not a vaccine.
It's gene therapy, according to the experts.
It's gene therapy. Mm-hmm. It's doing nothing but making people be compliant. There may be some therapeutics in it that help you so you don't get it as strong. I don't know, but it does. Here's the ignorance with the people. They think that if you have the vaccine, then you can't spread COVID. That's not the case. It's not the case at all. And so, go ahead.
The science is bearing the truth out. Just this weekend, I read some information that came out of Israel, and this stuff doesn't get highly publicized, but according to the report in Israel, 85 to 90% of the people hospitalized are vaccinated. 95% of those in severe injury have been vaccinated. In severe condition from COVID-19 have been vaccinated. Now, you can't just leave it at that, because, what if 100% of the population of Israel is vaccinated? So that doesn't mean anything. Here's what I was able to deduce from the information. It looks like 58% of the people in Israel have been vaccinated fully. So 58% of the people vaccinated make up 95% of the people in the hospital with severe COVID infection. And they make up 85 to 90% of all of the population, of all of the people who are hospitalized in Israel. So how is it that, they make up 95% of those in severe condition, but they only make up 58% of the population that are actually vaccinated? These numbers don't make sense. And I have a hard time believing much of anything that comes out of our government these days with regard to what the real numbers are. Because when you hear about studies from Israel, in England, I don't get it. And then I hear about people here that are vaccinated and they wind up in the hospital. I hear about, I have a son-in-law a nephew who is a paramedic. And I asked him, I said, what are you finding? He said, Bobby, I'm getting people constantly who are got the vaccine, and we're taking them into the hospital because they have COVID-19 or they're injured from the vaccine. I said, it's shocking how many people. So the other thing I think that we also have to look at is that, in the end times, the Bible speaks about, things are going to be flipped on its head in Romans chapter 1, in Matthew 24, 2 Thessalonians. Also, the scripture speaks of a time where there's going to be a strong delusion, that God actually sends a strong delusion. I mean, let's think about if we sit back and consider the cases that we're litigating, the things that we're involved in, when in our right mind would the mass population be willing to shut down, close their businesses down, take an experimental vaccine, and call a boy a girl and a girl a boy and say you can choose your gender? I mean, it is just, everyone is so confused.
Oh, it's a time we've never seen before. Going back to your statistics in Israel, and we're going late tonight, and what I would like to do, Bob, is if we can invite you back, and maybe we don't even have to do it live if you're not available, because I do want to talk about some of those other cases, but we're going long tonight, and maybe we could do a subsequent call at your convenience, and we'll cover that, and we'll broadcast that next week. But 58% in Israel, I would have thought, based on what I'm hearing here in the United States, that they're saying that close to 70% of Americans have been vaccinated. I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah.
But 58% in Israel, I would have thought it would have been higher, because they've been really, really strict with the whole COVID lockdown. Yeah, it would seem that way. But again, I think that some of those numbers are being pushed. Like, for example, I think in the United States, I think that 70% number are not people who maybe got the first shot, but they don't want to get the second shot. Mm-hmm.
They're realizing, oh, wait a minute, I've changed my mind. They're not fully vaccinated. I just don't believe those numbers. I have a hard time believing that many people. But you know what? I mean, we're in an echo chamber sometimes. We speak to the people that we agree with us, and I don't know, but we're in a day of disinformation, misinformation, lies, deceit. There's a lying spirit, and I'll be as bold to say there's a lying spirit coming from the White House, and I could be taken down for that, but I'll say it because it's true, and it has permeated the political left. And folks, we're gonna end this broadcast here, and we're gonna talk to Bob subsequently, and we're gonna bring it on about some of the other cases that are very germane right now and what's going on in the culture. But if you're not a believer tonight, if you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you can. Bob had said earlier that we're not to have a spirit of fear. I'm not afraid.
I'm disillusioned. I'm very discouraged with the way things are going in this country. But I have an eternal hope. Bob has an eternal hope because we have a hope in Christ. Jesus Christ died for our sins, and we're all sinners. We need forgiveness. And if you're watching tonight and you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you can do so. And it's very simple. It's not just this magic wand, but it's a simple prayer of confession. That, Lord, I confess my sins to you. I confess that I'm a sinner. Would you come into my heart and make me clean? Would you be the Lord of my life? And the scripture says that if you believe in your heart and confess with your lips, then you will be saved. And that prayer is sincere. That's the beginning of a faith walk. And God is faithful to come into your heart when you make that confession, when you pray. And you can have that assurance. These times are crazy right now. We're not just trying to scare you. It's the reality. This is where we are right now, folks. We're in a time of lies and deception. There's a spirit that's just permeating our culture right now. But you can have assurance in Christ. And folks, if you're a believer and you have those fears, fear not. We are secure in our faith in Christ. Bob, do you have any closing thoughts on that, or any other thoughts you bring to the table on that?
Well, as my father used to say, from the time when I was could remember, the earliest days I could remember, my dad would tell me, when you see these things come to pass, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. He would always speak it in the old King James.
Yeah. I knew your dad, and I knew that would be just like him. Yeah.
So that's it. I think, I agree with you. For, if you're here and you don't know the Lord, and you're scared, you don't need to be, because these are exciting times. And the Lord's going to come back. We don't know when, but as far as I can tell, it looks like it's going to be soon. But even if it's not, so be it. We'll persevere through this with the Lord's help.
Amen. We'll wait and watch. We know the seasons. We're told in the scriptures to recognize the seasons, and we do recognize that. Bob, thanks so much for being on. And I'd love to. I think this is so important too, that about this whole mandate. We'll kind of recap that as well, and talk about some of the other cases that we're working on, which have to do with the lawsuits with the state of emergency in California with Governor Newsom, Calvary Chapel San Jose, which is fighting a fight with the county. Is it the county or the city there?
It's the county.
The county about
County
meeting.
of Santa Clara. Yeah.
Yep. And then I'll just name the case, and we'll dive into it later. But Jim Doman, who is a friend of our ministry, the Advocates for Faith and Freedom, but Jim Doman versus Vimeo and his videos that have been removed. Bob, thanks for being on once again. God bless you, folks. Thanks for watching. And once again, if you haven't made a reservation for the Upper Room for August 20th on Friday, going to be a great night of comedy. Boy, after this, we need to laugh, don't we? It's going to be a great night of comedy with Robert G. Lee, Carrie Pomerelli, Ron Pearson. We'll be there. Marisa will be there. We're going to be there laughing. We're going to have a great time. God bless you, and we'll see you next time on live stream at the Upper Room. Take care.